Welcome to the Gridiron Unfiltered podcast, powered by Recon Sports, the show where we take a deep dive into the world of sports performance. I'm your host, Danny Davis, and today we're talking about how to build speed that translates not just on the stopwatch, but under the lights when it matters most. Our guest is a performance and speed coach who blends track mechanics with football realities. He's the founder of Vapor Trail 24/7 and has coached countless state champions, All-Americans, and All-State athletes. Coach Hughes has built a program on clear teaching, repeatable testing, and a culture that develops athletes both on and off the field. Coach Hughes, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Coach, one of the things that really stood out to me when looking at what you're doing is you're really giving access to 6th, 7th, 8th graders, high school athletes, access to professional level training. And when they start that at that young age and it compounds over their high school career, you can really see that separation. How important is it for these younger athletes at the maybe middle school, early high school level to start getting into that professional style training to separate them from their peers?
Yeah, usually at that age, and just so you know, we do go younger than that, but usually at that age, what you're trying to do is get them to mentally see the concepts that are going to be coming at them in the future. And the barometer that we have when we have them young people train with our top athletes, it's twofold. It's one, obviously, for the young person to see really what they need to do to become that person that they idolize or that they think they want to be when they grow up. And then it takes the established athlete back into the past where they get to see themselves when they were like that and what the needs are for them to learn. So quickly, these older athletes go back into their young life and start saying things like, well, I didn't hear this and I didn't hear that. And this is really important to know. So they're a really good conduit for us. But in answer to your question in a shorter way, it just allows our young people to totally understand, and not a little bit. We really are strict on that, for them to totally understand the concepts of goal setting and returning to work out and what is needed for them to become that better athlete.
That's huge. That's huge. So when we're looking at becoming a better athlete, is there a fine line between like genetics and actual like mechanics and sprinting? Like what's maybe that fine line between what your body can actually do at your peak performance and just knowing how to do it?
Yeah, well, there's an obvious, natural component where God says, "Hey, here's your speed life. You're good to go." But one of the things that we teach is that you're not born fast. You're born running mechanically correct. So you're way ahead of the learning curve if you're that fast kid, because you know how to use your arms naturally. They don't come across your body. They're going straight to the goal where you're running at. And then the others, we have to teach that. That doesn't mean that we can take, a kid that's running, let's say, a 5.140 and we make them a 4.240. That's not what we're saying. But what happens is the mechanics that are taught make that runner a lot better and more efficient in the running. The natural athlete, God just allows them to do all those mechanical things correctly, and then we just pile on top of that and help them with that.
I saw you mention something really interesting on one of your Instagram videos, that your strength, like the bench press, usually takes about 3 weeks to leave your body, but the sprint mechanics takes like 3 to 4 days. How do you find the balance between like maybe that overload and the balance of getting in there, getting speed work, but not putting your body at risk for injury with just going balls to the wall? When you're putting together a training plan, what does that balance look like?
The balance, you have a baseline that you're looking at, obviously, when you start with the athlete. But honestly, the balance comes from, your interaction with the athlete on a regular basis. Meaning when an athlete, an established athlete that comes to us twice a week, 3 times a week, when they walk into our gym, the first thing we say to them is, "What'd you do yesterday? What did you do today?" And we modify our schedule based upon what they did. So you could have a young soccer player, that really wants to work on their speed, and they belong to 3 soccer clubs. They're practicing every day. And on the weekend, they're traveling like 200 miles. When they come in, it's our responsibility to check in with them and modify what the workout is, because I promise you, they're not going to stop doing those things just because the speed trainer says, oh, you need to take a rest for this week. So it's not a static plan. It's a plan based upon individuals and how they handle the pressure of that. And to be honest with you, oftentimes, the parent wants the kid to be quote unquote working hard and working hard. And oftentimes in our gym, it doesn't have the aesthetics of that we're working hard, but they really are mentally, technically, and that's very, difficult and taxing on the body.
Wow, interesting. One of the things I loved about your facility was your 65-yard sprint tunnel there. I remember I was lucky enough to have a speed coach in high school. Shout out Rob Baxter, BX Player Development. But he had like a 10-yard or a 20-yard little sprint pad there, which was good for, the first get-offs and 10-yard. But in order to really train speed, you got to get out and actually sprint and open up the stride. We would have to go to tracks, domes. Why was it so important for you to find this facility with this sprint tunnel? And what has that allowed you to do to really train athletes at a different level?
Yeah, our motto is if you want to run fast, you have to run fast. And we understand that there's unique situations with trainers paying for square footage, things of that nature. And it's not a slap at other trainers that have smaller facilities. They're doing what they need to do. But oftentimes in that smaller facility, you're confined to more footwork drills, plyometric drills, where I say in one of my videos, you don't have that chance to decelerate in your run. When I found this building and we walked in and we saw it was 65 yards and narrow, it was, as far as I was concerned, it was really a unique situation, because I was used to going into bigger gyms, maybe it was an indoor soccer field or something like that, and trying to be cognizant of, can we just do this? Can we get these workouts in a narrower space? And the answer was yes. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If you're sprinting, I'm talking full sprint, Division I athlete, 20 yards, how long does it take them to stop safely? So you really have to put that into the mix. I got real lucky finding this facility. We have a lot of help from the owner of the building, and it really fits our needs and what we do. And that makes us unique to a whole lot of speed trainers that are in the state.
One of the things that I didn't really even know about before I got into this space of strength conditioning and speed training and now tracking the data on it was what deceleration was. You obviously hear of maybe miles per hour, and if you're an in-depth fan, you know what velocity is, but I had no idea what deceleration is. And once I started learning about it, it was like, wow, this is almost more important than how fast you actually are. Can you describe to the fans what the difference between the acceleration and then where the deceleration comes into play?
Well, first you got to give credit to the Russians and the communist bloc countries back in the day when they were training and developing Olympic athletes. Deceleration could be jumping off a box and landing and squatting. I tend to feel that deceleration could be backwards running. The component of that is that, yeah, everybody wants to run a 4.340, right? Everybody. Oh my gosh, that's the greatest thing ever. But really, the key is you run a 4.340, stop, cut, run a 4.340, stop, cut, run a 4.340. A defensive back is up, stop. So really, it's body control, being cognizant of the fact of your technique when you do decelerate. Because most of the kids that we get when they first start, what I ask them is what's their favorite car? And they'll, the majority of them will say a Lamborghini. And I'll say, okay, so I'm going to give you a Lamborghini. 16th birthday, I'm giving you a brand new Lamborghini. And I said, I know your mom and dad's going to look at me like I'm nuts, but you got one. However, when you get this Lamborghini, every time you get it, when you go from red light to red light or stop sign to stop sign, what you're going to do is you're going to floor it, and then you're going to slam on the brakes. Floor it the whole time you own it. How long is it going to be before that Lamborghini's getting put in the shop? And the kid will be able to say, not long. And I said, well, that's what you're doing to your body when you work out. Every practice, every run, every time you get that Lamborghini, 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 every time you get that And what they would do is when they first get to me is when they decelerate, it sounds like a bunch of horses are trying to stop. When we get them to decelerate in a quieter foot pattern, and it takes a lot of stress off the body and things. So we allow them to see what the benefit is and what the detriment is if they don't do it. It's not rocket science.
There's so many things today with technology and like tracking speed, the mechanics. You have GPSs. Now there's softwares that have AIs for coaches to see how fast players are running based off of their film. What are your thoughts on all of the new technology in today's world with the speed?
I think there's obviously a place for it. I think it's very beneficial, but you're not going to see that in our gym. And you're talking basically economics and more of being an old school type of coach. I can see the speed. I can see the development. I can see, and the funny thing is that so can the parents when they go to a soccer game. But the biggest litmus test for that is another parent will come up, not even knowing the kid trains with me, will come and say, "Hey, what happened to your kid? They're running so much faster on the football field." And that's the litmus test. Now, what you're talking about with all the technology and things of that nature, when you're at a Penn State and Ohio State, like some of our kids were in Michigan State, when they're putting on those monitors for every practice, that's key because, a Division I football player is at the facility, from 6:30 in the morning until 9:30 at night. And they have to monitor that this asset that they have to their program. And you can't just eyeball that. You have 120 football players that are like thoroughbreds. You have to know, 1/100th of a second how they're doing or how they're performing or what their heart rate is. So I feel there's a huge advantage to that, but they have such a big team that are monitoring these things along with nutritionists, along with doctors. And yeah, I think it's the greatest thing ever, but it's just not going to happen at Vapor Trail.
Yeah, I'm a big data guy. I do it for those schools, and they have all of these different softwares tracking speed. And then, it's interesting to see now all of these speed platforms side by side and how different they are. And it's like,
yes,
okay, what am I even looking at here? And then sometimes the GPS blew my mind when I first got in this space, like how wrong the GPS outputs are. Like, and it's so much to the point where, 45 miles an hour as you get a spike, obviously that's a spike. But if I'm like a 17 mile an hour guy and I pop off a 19 and a half or a 20, there's so many spikes in it. It's like, I don't know, did he just pop off a 20 or is that a spike? And it's almost like you're fighting with this internal feeling because the data's telling you one thing, but your gut's telling you another. When the data and these sensors, they might not be correct.
Yeah. Well, and that's in the old school way of what you're saying, we'd call that if you ran a 40, you had a flyer, meaning it was you were timed at this rate that was beyond normal for you as an individual. And we've had kids do that. And at Adidas Rivals, and where they ran a 40 that was incredible, where the people that were running the camp were, I don't think that was real. I don't think, however, it is real. They caught it. It was the stars aligned, everything, boom, they hit it. And sometimes it happens on those monitors. Sometimes it's, false information on the monitors, but I would assume that the big time programs really have so much data that they can see, a false positive or something like that. I think the cool part of that is that if they're doing too much or anything like that, that these players at these big time programs will get pulled off the field at practice. Somebody sitting behind a computer screen is like, okay, well, that's enough reps.
Right.
They got to come off.
Right.
It's crazy that I'm a big recovery guy, and that's very impressive when they use it for that.
Yeah, I just saw, I think it was Gatorade come out with this patch that players wear, and they scan it, and then it tells them how dehydrated they are. Or, there's always a fine line between it just like being a marketing scam and it actually being valuable. There is a lot of value out there, and it is fun seeing this technology really bring the athlete to a whole nother level both on and off the field.
Yeah. And if the modern stuff is like the shiny nickel, we call it, and it's really interesting and it's really cool. But if you notice in the world of speed now, slowly what's starting to happen on you, where you're seeing is they're going back to the old ways. The Todd Marinovich, he was the father of that big time quarterback that went to USC, and he was kind of thought of as like a real hardcore dad. Some of the trainings that he did and some of the trainings that Adam Archuleta, I don't know if you're familiar with that name, he ended up training with this guy that was from a communist bloc country that defected to the United States and lived near him, and where you're doing bench presses and pushing the weight up and catching them, or doing dumbbell flies and catching the weight. There was all these radical movements. That's starting to come back now, where they're seeing that simple is better. So, it's not an exact science, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that's going on.
When we talk about things just evolving over time, have you noticed anything in your experience with like the high school athlete, how they have evolved from today to 5, 10, 15 years ago? What are some of the things that you've noticed that are different, both positive and negative?
Yeah. Honestly, I get really upset when I hear people that are talking to me saying that, these kids aren't like our generation. We were so much tougher. We worked so much harder. I see it the total opposite way. There is no way Tom Hughes on a Saturday morning in the summertime was getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning to go to a gym. There's no way. I was laying in the bed, got up at noon, watched cartoons, ate cereal, went to the swimming pool. So if you're telling me that these kids are not better, you're wrong. Also, the other thing is that they're smarter. They're so smart when it comes to themselves and how they have to apply these things to become a better athlete. Now, I'm talking about the ones that really, really want to be great, right? They understand, they ask questions. They ask questions of me that I would have never asked a coach. My day and a lot of people's day, the coach was because I said so. That was the answer. Now that's not good enough. Now these kids have all this information. So it challenges the coach. The coach becomes better. The athlete becomes better because the coach becomes better, and all these things happen. The negative drawback that I feel on that is that some people get information and they abuse the information that they got. Meaning, hey, this girl, so, I'm in Eastern Pennsylvania, and if we have a track kid, hey, this girl ran faster than you, my daughter, out in Pittsburgh. Okay, you have the number and you have the information, but was it windy? Was it rainy? Was it all-weather track? Was it, you know what I'm saying? So there's these variables that don't get put in, then that pressure gets put on the young athlete because they don't have the answers to the question. They just have the number.
Interesting.
We don't chase numbers at Vapor Trail. We race technique, and that's it. So we don't chase a number. We chase the technique. So a kid could run a personal best and have technically run it really bad, and we're on them about it. But like, well, that was an ugly race. If you clean this up, just imagine what you'd be doing. So yeah, it's obviously twofold, but I really am impressed with how the athletes are today.
Oh, that's really good to hear. What's your opinion on multi-sport athletes at the high school level versus non-multi-sport? Should they be doing multiple things? Should they focus on one? What's your opinion on that?
My answer is you should be doing multiple. One part of Vapor Trail speed training is we train you to be an athlete. So it's not always sports specific what we're doing with our speed training or development training. So if you have, I'll have a volleyball player work out with a football player, and, the common thought on that is, well, they're not getting what they need. I said in the one reel that I had on Instagram that the one father said, my son gets enough football training. He doesn't get enough speed training or developmental other sport training. And as you and I both know, that if you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, one, you're going to get in that rut. Two, you're probably going to be susceptible to injury, to overuse. So I'm a big have fun in high school coach. Listen, this is the best time of your life. Go have fun.
No bills, no nothing.
Yeah. Go play all this. It'll work out. It'll totally work out.
Have you noticed anything change in the parents over the last 20 years? And what are maybe some of the things that you see parents do really well, putting their son or daughter in a position to be successful versus maybe not knowing what to do or how to do that?
Yeah, I came from my dad was a real successful athlete. He was drafted by the Cleveland Browns, and he went to Bloomsburg University. Blah blah blah. My dad hardly came to stuff that I played, and he hardly came to any of my events or anything like that. Or what he would do is hide and come to the games. Now there's such an active involvement by the parent. To be honest with you, sometimes I think that slows the development of the athlete, meaning I know you're going to be there all the time. I know you're going to get in the car and drive me 200 miles. I know we're going to get a hotel. I know. Then when they go to college, you don't know. I don't know. And now it's all self-sufficient. So training the brain and training the responses sometimes, I think, gets lost in that. The parents are very more knowledgeable than they were, 20 years ago or whatever. So like anything, with knowledge comes great wisdom or comes great stupidity. So it all depends what that is. Just because you know the call's right, don't mean that you should be maybe berating the ref knowing that the call is right. Sometimes for the athlete's development, you have to deal with getting a bad call and losing the game on that bad call. The last thing I say about that with the parents' involvement, because we all know that if they're going to belong to a club or anything like that, it's going to be funded by the parent. It's not, obviously it's not the kid working and going to. So my thing is that I tell Vapor Trail kids, when you lose, it's supposed to hurt. It's supposed to hurt real bad. So it's hard for it to hurt if you lost a game and then you play another game tomorrow, and then you play another game the next day. So I played Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I lost on Friday. When I lost on Friday, there was nothing going on until next Friday. Now your friends are making fun of you in school, and the team that beat you, I'm talking like youth sports and stuff like that, where you had to deal with those detriments and setbacks more than they do now. So we're in a world where pain of losing is short. On to the next game. That's one of the things I'm not big with as far as how that goes.
Yeah, and I think that's just it's almost what makes this time in life, the high school, like so unique and so special, because you get to experience all of that without any like real life consequences. You do that as an adult, there's probably some consequences coming to play and not just losing a game. And I think from a parent's perspective, I'm not a parent, and so I can't speak on this firsthand, but thinking back to like my childhood days, you saw a lot of the parents put the competitive nature of, you look at youth sports, they're like all trying to beat the other youth sports teams, when really it's about developing the athlete. No one cares about the score. How are they handling failure? How are they handling toughness, things like that.
And it's easy to get on the parent train. I know these parents, it's you love your kid. Being a parent, you love your kid so much that you will do and say really stupid stuff in this goal that you have to make this person successful. So, that's just part of it. Now it's just getting put on video, and people know more about what you're saying and doing, but it comes from a place of love, which we really talk to the parents. We have a lot of discussions with the parents as much as we do the athletes on the parents' strengths or weaknesses or what they're bringing to the table. I told an athlete, a girl that we taught how to do a certain amount of events. She had zero success the year before she came with us, and then ended up winning districts in one event and went to states. So she went to 2 events at states and had a lot of success. The hardest practice we had, and I told her that I said, tomorrow's going to be the hardest practice we're ever going to have. And he's like, good. Well, they didn't see me. I walked in with a box of tissues and sat in there. And all we did, she went to put on her shoes. I said, no, don't put your shoes on. We're going to have a discussion. And by the end of that hour and a half discussion, there was not one person, including me, that wasn't crying and disclosing and opening up this book for freedom for her to become a better athlete.
Wow.
And it's tough. to do that, and it's uncomfortable to do that, but it's some of the things that we're proud of at Vapor Trail, that we really get into the brass tacks of it. I kind of don't know how not to do that, just the way I was raised and stuff. So we go that extra mile, not because it's a great thing to do. It's just our DNA at Vapor Trail.
It's funny hearing you say that, because I'm sure you could have put together a extremely tough workout, but almost nothing as tough as just taking off the shoes and having a real conversation like that.
And honestly, the hardest thing, probably the toughest thing for our athletes and parents, is for the athlete to love themselves, where they say, it's okay. It's okay to be great. Hey, how is your kid good? Yeah, my kid's really good, because the world beats you up for that. I was the first state champion in the history of our school in any sport. And I was a high school All-American. In 12 years of school, my worst day of school was the day I came back from winning states. The absolute worst day of school I had. You know, I could go into what happened, but I won't. But it was the worst day that I ever had in school. And it was because people around you perceive you in a different way. I'm the same guy that left 4 states that came back, but the perception was, you know, so if I said, hey, let's sit at this cafeteria table. Oh, okay, Mr. State Champion. You know, you're trying to, and these people know that. So these kids are not going to say, hey, yeah, I'm great. But really, to be great, you have to be able to say that, at least to yourself. And you have to really internalize that. Don't be quick to say, oh, I'm not good. Or don't be quick to just be like everybody else, because you're not. You're a 5%er. So when you find out what it's like to be in that 5% area, the air is different. The people you hang around with are different. There's less of them.
Yep.
You know, 95% is probably saying, hey, what about us? But I'm telling you, it's a great place to be. So for parents and kids to really be love themselves, and that's the best way I can put it. It's hard, and that's a big thing that we do at Vapor Trail too.
Before we jump back into the show, a quick shout out to one of our proud sponsors, Gardner Roofing. If you're looking for a roofer you can trust, Gardner Roofing has been Colorado's go-to team since 1998. They're family owned, built on integrity, and they treat every roof like it's their own. Whether it's repairs, a full replacement, or just a free inspection, Gardner Roofing is the name Colorado trusts. Check them out at gardnerroofs.com or give them a call at 303-332-6224. Gardner Roofing, their family has your family covered. I think another difficult part is finding the balance between finding your self-worth in like performance and outcomes, and just finding self-worth and actually doing it and just getting better. You know, from high school to, you know, my experience in the Army, my entire life was based off of performance. I was either doing really good if I was performing good, or mentally I was doing really bad because I was performing bad. And it's like, but how do you get around that? Like, how do you coach without performance or without, I don't know. It's a difficult equation to hack.
Yeah. And if you went into service, you said, imagine what it was like, if you remember back, your first day when you got off the bus, what your first day was like, and how they're meeting you at the bus and what they're doing and what they're saying. And you're like, boy, that ain't the same thing this recruiter was saying to me. And then it just goes from here you are a teenager, and boom, it just smacks you right in the face. That's what a lot of athletics is. It might not be to that degree of severity, but athletics is tough like that.
Big time. And it's getting even tougher. What have you seen in the shift now, trying to have athletes get to the next level? Now that you have the transfer portal, JUCO doesn't count, NIL, how much more as a high school athlete, how much more do you have to stand out to actually get to that next level now?
You have to promote yourself. I call recruiting like going to buy a car. Only the parents and the kids, the ones that selling the car. And we're athletes, we're wired to be humble. We're wired to say, you know, it's not that big a deal. And I know these parents, it's really difficult for a lot of them to brag about their kid on social media, or to, when they talk to a recruiter or contact the college. I just had a talk with a girl last night, superstar. And I can just see the discomfort of her having to say something. Well, they didn't call me back. I said, well, then you need to get on the phone and call them. You need to email them. Oh, I don't want to bother them. No, yes, you do. That's their job, to be bothered. So yeah, it's a difficult prospect now, but once you get used to that, not that you would get used to it, but you get more comfortable with it, you'll understand that the people that are recruiting you, you're doing the university a favor by going there. If you're a 4.0 student in microbiology and you run on the track team and you graduate and you set a record and you're checking a whole lot of boxes for that university. You're doing them a favor.
Wow.
They want you. So that's the way you have to go into it, as not cocky, but just understand I'm the reason why we're sitting here right now. So
man, you just lit a small fire in me. I'm about to go reach out with some recon sports to these schools, man. I'm doing you a favor by calling, even though it's 10 times. Wow.
It really is. I mean, they'll try to hide it. Hey, I'm giving you a scholarship. Hey, I'm giving you, you're giving me that for a reason. And I was lucky to have my father in that process. He wasn't the most outgoing person or anything like that, but he would explain to me, he's like, hey, listen, as an African-American athlete coming to their school, dude, you're checking a lot of boxes that they need for their certification for this or for this, right? So, yeah, keep your head up, look them in the eye and, poke your chest out a little bit and talk to them. Don't put your head down or anything like that. So you can see Vapor Trails more than speed training. And it's just a great thing to be able to have a little bit of influence in an athlete's life. But yeah, it's important that you really care about yourself.
That's big time. That's big time. Coach Hughes, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I really appreciate you coming on here. Where could people find you at on Instagram and follow some of the great stuff that you're doing and posting?
Yeah, if you punch in for any of the social medias, Vapor Trail 24/7, it'll come up. You want to contact us via email, vtrail247@gmail.com. Our websites, we're kind of easy to find.
Awesome. Folks, even if you're not looking to increase your speed, go check his Instagram out, because you're going to find some awesome ideas on how to tell some legit stories. They do a really good job putting some great videos together and some great information.
Shout out to at Andy, the chef. He does our reels for us. That was a godsend to find him. Outstanding rapper and entertainer. And we just linked up and he's been doing this for me ever since. And all the kids tell me my reels, they're awesome. So I guess that means something. I don't know.
That does mean something, because that's hard to do.
Yeah.
That's hard to do today.
Yeah.
Again, folks, go check them out. If you're in the PA area and want some expert speed training, go check out the Vapor Trail 24/7. Again, that's Coach Tom Hughes. Everyone, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the Fan Day Nation so you don't miss out on future episodes. And we'll see you next time.